All right, let's get into it. Today, we're unpacking Advantage at Sea, which is the new game plan from the U.S. Navy, Marine Corps, and the Coast Guard. And trust me, this isn't just some minor update. This document signals a really fundamental shift in how America plans to handle business on the world's oceans.
And they don't waste any time telling you how serious this is. I mean, right there in the foreword, they lay it out. They're basically saying that what we do right now in this decade is going to set the stage for the next 100 years. That's a pretty heavy way to kick things off.
So, why all the drama? Well, here's why it matters to, basically everyone. Our entire global economy literally floats. About 90% of everything we buy, sell, and trade travels on a ship. So, controlling the seas isn't just about warships and sailors, it's about keeping the lights on for the whole world.
So what's the big change that's forcing this new strategy? Well, the first part of the document really gets into how the world has completely changed. The old playbook, they argue, just doesn't work anymore. And this right here is the core of it. The big takeaway is that since the last strategy came out in 2015, the game has changed. The days when the U.S. could just assume it could go anywhere and do anything on the ocean, well, according to this document, those days are over. So what's really on the line? It's this idea they call the rules-based international order. You can think of it like the planet's operating system. It's the set of rules and agreements that have, for the most part, kept major wars at bay and allowed trade to flow freely since World War II. And the whole point of this new strategy is that this very system is in real danger.
Okay, so if the system's in danger, who's the one shaking the cage? Well, the strategy doesn't pull any punches here. In the next section, it gets very specific and names names.
The document points the finger directly at China and Russia. But, and this is important, it sees them as different kinds of challenges. China is labeled the most pressing, long-term strategic threat, someone who wants to actually rewrite the rules of the global system to benefit them. Russia, on the other hand, is described as more of a disruptor, someone who wants to break the current system and create chaos to expand their own power.
Now, if you want to see why they're so concerned, just look at these numbers. This is a look at the growth of China's Navy. We're talking about a force that went from about 100 ships back in 2000 to over 350 just 20 years later. That's a more than threefold increase. That kind of rapid growth is, without a doubt, a huge reason this new American strategy even exists.
And this slide basically boils it all down. This is the problem statement. Straight from the source, the aggressive growth and modernization of both the Chinese and Russian navies are, and I'm quoting here, eroding U.S. military advantages. Simple as that.
Okay, so that's the problem. What's the solution? This is where things get interesting. The strategy calls for a massive shift in how the sea services even think about themselves. It's all about becoming one single integrated force.
The big buzzword here is Integrated All-Domain Naval Power. Yeah, it's a mouthful, I know. But the idea is actually pretty simple. You take the Navy, the Marines, and the Coast Guard, and instead of having them just work together, you truly merge their capabilities. You make it so the whole is way, way more powerful than the sum of its parts working seamlessly across sea, air, land, space, and cyberspace.
And what's the point of all this integration? Well, they lay out three main goals. First, and most obviously, to be a more deadly and effective fighting force. Second, to give the president more and better options when a crisis pops up. And third, to be way more unpredictable, making it a whole lot harder for an adversary to guess what you're going to do next.
So, you've got this new, highly integrated force. How exactly is it supposed to operate? This leads us to what the strategy calls the competition continuum.
You can think of it as three different operating modes. There's day-to-day competition, which is the normal state of affairs. The goal there is just to keep things stable and deter bad behavior. Then you have a crisis, where the goal is to calm things down and keep your options open. And finally, if all else fails, you enter conflict, where the mission is simple: win. The whole idea is for the force to be able to move between these phases without missing a beat.
And this quote right here, this signals a huge change in attitude. They're saying they're going to take more calculated tactical risks and adopt a more assertive posture. In plain English, they're done just reacting. The plan is to be more proactive, to get out there and challenge their rivals every single day. All right, so you've got this bold, assertive new plan, but you need the right gear to pull it off, right? And that brings us to the final part of the strategy: modernization. And we're talking about a complete pivot in how they think about the fleet. The old way was to build a few really big, really expensive, exquisite ships. The new plan moved towards having way more ships and systems that are smaller, more spread out, and crucially, a mix of ships with sailors on them and ships with no one on them at all. It's a shift from quality over quantity to quality and quantity.
So what does that look like in practice? Well, here's the shopping list. You see it right there. Unmanned systems, long-range missiles, and making sure you can supply the fleet in a fight. It's all about humans and robots working together, a hybrid fleet, and networks that can't be easily taken down. This is the blueprint for the Navy of the future.
And everybody has to pull their weight. This isn't just one service doing all the work. It means each branch has to make some really tough calls. For the Navy, it's about focusing on pure combat power. For the Marines, it's about choosing better tech over having more troops. And for the Coast Guard, it's all about upgrading their ships and their cyber game to handle modern threats.
So when you boil it all down, the whole strategy really stands on 5 main pillars. 1. Create that totally integrated naval force. 2. Work even closer with allies and partners. 3. Get better at winning that daily competition before any shots are fired. 4. Make absolutely sure you can control the seas if a war does break out. And 5. Go all in on modernizing the force for the future. That's the whole shebang.
Which, of course, leaves us with the big question. This strategy, Advantage at Sea, is definitely a bold vision for a new and much more dangerous era. But as America's rivals keep building their own fleets, and as technology moves at a dizzying speed, you have to wonder, will this new integrated approach actually be enough to keep that advantage?